introduce myself again. My name is Abby Reed, and I serve as the Director of Neighboring at Central United Methodist Church. One is an opportunity to listen and to grow in compassion. Our neighbors' experiences are diverse and at times complex. Yet when we take time to truly listen, what we find is strings of our lives and each other's lives. My hope is to cultivate a spirit of openness and curiosity that will inevitably help us grow into a community that can be in solidarity with one another. As we have begun to take on this new initiative at Central United Methodist Church to help reduce food insecurity on UNM, excuse me, I ran today and I have runner's cough, on UNM and CNM campuses, I have been reading about food justice. Simply put, the food justice movement works to ensure universal access to nutritious, affordable, and culturally appropriate food for all. While working with Albuquerque FaithWorks Collaborative as the Director of Housing and Homelessness, I came to a firm conclusion that we must see housing as a necessity for all and not as a commodity. The common thread I continually see in basic needs, whether housing or food, clothing, or most of all safety, is that when we work toward restoring these for people, we are restoring the core dignity of all people. No basic need is a commodity. Every basic need is a necessity to bring wholeness. While reading about food justice, I discovered, I'm not good at French, Jacques Diouf. Jacques was a Senegalese diplomat and the Director General of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization. And there's a quote by Jacques that says, "Hunger is not an issue of charity, it's an issue of justice." An issue of justice. As we embark on this journey of seeing food insecurity reduce, I'm continually reminding myself that it is the fair, right thing for all people to access nutritional, affordable, and culturally appropriate food. Tonight we have my friend, I'm going to try to say your name, Miquela. Did I do it? All right, Miquela, but she goes by Q. Q is a social worker from the University of New Mexico, and she's here with us tonight. We recently partnered with Q and her team of social workers to do SNAP-A-PALOOZA on the UNM campus. Partnering with Q was the perfect opportunity to join the work of reducing food insecurity. SNAP allows students regular access to groceries while offering them the autonomy to buy what they like and need. Partnering with Q and the Basic Needs Consortium allows us to be around those on the front lines of helping students deal with basic needs insecurities and giving them the added support to ensure that students, faculty, and staff have access to vital resources that are life-changing to many. Q, I really enjoyed partnering with you, and I'm excited for our community to meet and learn from you tonight. So without further ado, I just want to present to you guys Q.
Thank you. I really, really enjoyed partnering with you as well and several of the volunteers that were there for SNAP-A-PALOOZA. It's really nice to see you again, Catherine and Glenn. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's okay. Okay, can everybody see my screen? One time I did a whole presentation and I was just talking and talking and nobody could see anything that I was referring to.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so thank you so much for the introduction, Abby. I'm here to talk a little bit about what I know about basic needs and social work and our New Mexico college students and my experience is specifically at the University of New Mexico and some of the initiatives that we've done to try and address some of these issues. Yes, my name is Miquela Ortiz Upston. Abby did a great job saying my name. It's a hard name. That's why so many people call me either Kella or Q, so I'm fine with whatever. My pronouns are she, her, aya. And yes, I am a social worker. I got my social work degree from New Mexico State University, but my previous master's degree in family life education was from UNM and my bachelor's was from UNM. So My dad won't admit to anybody that I got any degrees from New Mexico State because he bleeds cherry and silver. So it's he just says I got everything from UNM. So a little bit more about my background and how I got involved in this. So in addition to attending UNM, this May will be 15 years since I started working at the University of New Mexico. I started off as a student employee in the Dean of Students office. And then from there, went on to work in several different places across campus. Probably the biggest chunk of time that I spent after working in the Dean of Students office, which I was involved in orientation at the time because new student orientation used to be in the Dean of Students office. But after that, a large chunk of my time was spent with advisement. And when I started working in advisement, I got trained to be an at-risk advisement advisor. And what that meant was that I was responsible for meeting with the students that were put on probation or suspension, and that were struggling in school. A lot of the time, there was this misconception that I noticed, and some of you have probably heard this story. I was hearing a lot from different people that, oh, these are the students that are not used to being away on their own for the first time, so they're just partying too much, not wanting to show up to class. Kind of putting a lot of that responsibility on the student for not doing well in their courses. And so a lot of my training was involved in, okay, so then let me help try and figure out, is that really the root of the issue? In meeting with the students, because when they were put on probation, they would have to meet with me for so many times to check off on this list that they had and to show that they were making effort towards getting off of academic probation or suspension. And what I was noticing was occasionally there were the students that just didn't want to go to class or, that misconception that I was mentioning. But the majority of students that I was seeing were struggling with food or housing insecurity, or were not getting their mental health needs met. And a lot of times it was all a mixture of all of it. Several that really stood out to me, I had one student and I was looking over her grades with her. We were going through her class schedule and I was pointing out some of the areas where she was struggling. And she said, I'm so sorry. She said, I'm living in my car with my younger sister. We look for events on campus where we can try and find free food. When we can, we try and go into Johnson Gym to shower. And so she wasn't able to do well in her classes because she was taking care of a younger sibling and also was food and housing insecure. And I was seeing more and more of this. And that at this time, I was completing my degree in family life education at UNM through the Family Studies Department. And then around this time, I also made a switch to working in graduate advisement, and I was seeing so many of the same trends there. And I was working with a lot more international students and was seeing it is really prevalent in our international student population as well. And so I felt like I wasn't able to do all that I wanted to do to help these students that were in front of me, that were telling me that they were sleeping in their car, that they were taking care of a family member, that they were struggling with depression and anxiety because they hadn't eaten or because they didn't have access to some of these things. And so I decided to go back to school in New Mexico State to get my degree in social work, to hopefully come back to the university with a way to try and address these issues. So once I graduated with my degree in social work, I started working at the Women's Resource Center, supporting a grant through the Department of Justice and the Office on Violence Against Women to address issues of domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking for college students. And while I was there, I was talking to the previous director, and she was like, tell me a little bit about yourself, because I just started there. And she said, why did you, pursue social work? What are your interests? And even though I was hired for that position, after I told her the story I just told all of you, she said, let's address it. Let's do this. Let's make this happen here. And so we worked together. I was only there, I think, like a month before we started writing up proposals for funding. And we got funded to start a social work internship program to help address these issues. Also at this time, it was peak COVID times. And so we were seeing a lot of these issues being exacerbated because there were so many students struggling with all of these different issues in a different way. And so we just felt like it was the perfect time to try and implement this at the university and to try and fill the gap that so many of these students weren't able to fill with what was already being provided. Even though there were so many resources there, there were still some of these things that students weren't able um, to find resources on or support with. And so in our efforts to try and help as much as possible, we had the idea of bringing in interns who were learning about all these things, who could get trained on these things to help support the effort as well. So we started the UNM social work internship program with the Women's Resource Center. And then shortly after that, the director got another position and left, and the funding that we had initially secured was lost. And I was like, oh my gosh, we were starting to see the data come back on all the students that we were helping, and I'll share some of that with you in another slide. And we were like, we can't see this go away. We need to try and save this program. And Dr. Kargas, who is really instrumental in a lot of the data that you'll see on the next slides, because that's what she does with her team. They look at the rates of basic needs insecurity in New Mexico. She was such a strong advocate for our program and worked with us to try and find a new home for it. And at that time, they were developing the well-being team within the UNM Dean of Students office. And so they say that we were replanted over there. So we are now a part of the UNM well-being team. And I went full circle from starting off as a student employee in the Dean of Students office to now being a social worker in the Dean of Students office. So Abby did a much more eloquent job of describing and defining basic needs security. But as a reminder and just a little refresher, the definition that's used in the Student Basic Needs Report is equitable access to nutritious food and safe and affordable housing. And so when you look at the numbers that I'm going to bring up on some of these other slides, this is what we're addressing and what we're talking about when we're looking at these numbers and the efforts that we're doing to try and address these things. So the most recent basic needs data that the UNM Basic Needs Project, which Dr. Kargas and her team did all the research and gathered and put into this amazing report, which I would encourage all of you to look through if you ever have the chance. It's at basicneeds.unm.edu. I put the very basic key points from the report, but it's really in depth and it goes into a much bigger explanation and context of all of this. But just to kind of give you an idea of what our students are facing, and for this report that they did, they had nearly 10,000 students from colleges and universities across New Mexico participate, and nearly 4,000 faculty and staff. And for the purpose of this, we'll look at students, but 58% of all students in the past year from taking that, and so they did it in spring of 2023, were food insecure. 62% of all students in the past year were housing insecure, and 14% of the students experienced homelessness within that past year. So these are really large numbers when we think about a student population. When we're looking at food and housing insecurity, that's more than half of students in college students in New Mexico that are struggling with these issues. I'm not going to read all of this as in depth. I could go on and talk, so I need to try and condense this as much as possible. But some things I just want to point out. When I was talking about, the students that I was seeing that were struggling with these issues, and a lot of them also were struggling with mental health issues, it all works together and plays together. If somebody doesn't have a place to sleep at night, or they don't have consistent meals and they're not getting the food they need, they're at a higher risk of having anxiety and depression. And you can find that from the data that they got from these students. Also, if you look at it, our marginalized student populations are disproportionately being impacted by these issues. And so what the pie chart that I included here was our efforts to try and address these when looking at these populations of students that are really impacted by this. And this was from the spring of 2023. One thing that when I work with my interns, they get trained on all of these issues. And then we also, when they complete the program, they have to follow what's called the CSWE core competencies, and they have to be able to demonstrate all of those. One of those competencies is research-informed practice. So the best way to inform the practice is to look at this data that Dr. Kargas and her team have received from the work that they've done to put it to practice, which is pretty amazing that we have this data, because usually when you look at basic needs information for students, you'll find a very general thing about the United States. Her data gives very specific information about New Mexicans and New Mexican students. And so in our efforts to do this, we had an intern, and this is just an example of one of the things that we did. She tried to base herself out of African American Student Services, and she held SNAP workshops where students would go into a computer lab and all go in there to try and address some of these issues for some of these marginalized populations that are really experiencing some of these issues. And so you can see here some of the demographics of students that we have served during that time when we started looking at this data and really partnering with Dr. Kargas and our team. So you might ask, with our program, what are we doing to address these issues? And as you saw from that slide and what I was just mentioning, we're doing some of those workshops. We've had food and housing insecurity workshops. We had a series last spring where our interns made like cookbooks. I've talked to Abby about this, about food that they got from the pantry that they could make into meals. And we had students bring food, and we brought some food and we did little demonstrations there. We had, workshops on where to find housing in New Mexico and things like that. We also do one-on-one meetings with students. We do these either in person or remotely. And the reason I think it's so important that we have both options is a lot of our students that are struggling with these issues are having to go home right after class to take care of family or kids, or having to rush to work. So we try and be as accommodating as possible, meeting with them in off hours, sometimes on the weekends, in the evenings, trying to meet them where they are so that they all have equitable access to us and to be able to ask some of these questions. Events such as SNAP-A-PALOOZA, and you can see there's our internship team here from this most recent SNAP-A-PALOOZA. And during these events, it's a benefits event where we have a lot of our partners come together. I'll have a picture where you'll see several of the other partners that we have, such as Abby and some of the ones from the state and Roadrunner Food Bank. And we come together with all of us there with information and goodies to give away to get people to register for SNAP. Our first event that we did, a SNAP-A-PALOOZA, which was in the fall, we had just over 70 students attend. And this most recent one that we did in partnership with Abby and many of you here, we almost, and I don't even say almost, we doubled our number. We had nearly 140 students attend, and I really attribute that to the support that we received for that event and just the motivation and excitement from everybody to address these issues. And then also we provide outreach materials about SNAP and other benefits. We try and also put those in different languages. We have an intern that has translated some into Spanish. We have another one that's translated some into Navajo. So we're trying to make some of those also accessible in other ways culturally. And so that there's not those language barriers there as well. And also our participation in the Basic Needs Consortium, which is where I first met Abby in one of the breakout rooms. As I mentioned, we couldn't have done this without, and had this last event be so successful without our amazing collaborations and partnerships and affiliations. This last collaboration with the Central United Methodist Church was really successful, as you heard from the numbers that we were able to increase, and also having, as I mentioned, people from Roadrunner Food Bank, McKinney-Vento, the healthcare authority, just having everybody there. I mean, the state was taking paper applications from students when they were filling them out there so they could take them right away. It just really helps. And then the affiliation agreements that we also have with the different schools, because UNM is developing a social work degree program, but right now they don't have one where they have interns and students coming from. So we have affiliation agreements with New Mexico State University, Highlands University, Eastern, and Western. And so a lot of our interns come from all of those schools, and they're really instrumental in making sure we have everything reserved. They're calling people, they're going around. I know Helene there has gone around with Abby to help collect donations and things. And so just working together as a team and as a community is what makes this possible to help address these issues for students. And I know I'm running out of time. So like I said, I could talk about this forever. But I want to thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. If you have any follow-up questions or ever want to just reach out to me, or you have a student that you know of that you would like to get connected with us, please feel free to either email me directly at miquela@unm.edu, or you can email our general account, which all of our team checks, at socialwork@unm.edu.
So Brittany wasn't able to send a video over, so we don't have a video tonight from Brittany.
Oh, okay. I
But
was like, I need to talk so I don't.
but I can't just emphasize enough for us what honor and privilege it is for us to be able to work alongside you guys and to serve you guys. And when I first met Q, I told her my goal is to make you guys have the best event possible, and that you feel supported by the things that we can contribute. And I also just want to just say to the Central folks, you guys just did a tremendous job so that this event really could be as successful as it was. And we're not done. That's not the only event. So what I'm really looking forward to is just the future of collaboration that we'll have specifically with Q around SNAP, and potentially some other dynamics, maybe a cooking class or cookbooks or different things like that. But if you could just dream with me right now, Q, what would you dream for the coming years?
Oh, geez. I feel like you're probably one of the first people to ask me that question. I mean, usually I have to write down, my goals for the next year. I think for me, as I mentioned from the beginning, the holistic approach is really important to me, that we are taking care of all aspects of the students, and finding ways to do that with addressing these while also helping them improve their mental health. We, in our department, we rely a lot on SAMHSA's 8 dimensions of wellness and how they're all interconnected. Occupational wellness, spiritual wellness, all of the different things. If one area is impacted, then it's likely that the other areas are going to be impacted. So how do we work to address the whole person when we're doing some of these events? And so, I mean, yeah, I think we can continue to work together to brainstorm some really cool ideas. As I mentioned to you when we met after the event and just debriefing, we've had other people in other areas reach out like, hey, can you come to the residence halls and do an event over here? I heard what you all did outside of the sub. We've had requests to help with they did a, what's it called? Where the cooking competition, they did some sort of cooking competition and wanted some presence from our team there as well. And so I think there's some fun and exciting things that we could probably do to help address some of those areas.
I'm excited about that too. I'm pretty passionate about, I think, like I said in the introduction, about thinking holistically and how that does bring back so much dignity for the person. And oh, we've got a question from Andy here. So, it's important for me to always think about holisticness, and I'm excited to start thinking a little bit deeper too about how could we, do events and think about ways of doing things that would encompass so much more for students. Let's take a look at Andy's question.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it. And then Abby, you can, if you want to elaborate. I was just going to say continuing this collaboration, I think, is key. I mean, um, Abby's been, I'm a huge fan of Abby. Abby's been incredible, and it's helped to make us feel like there's a community, like we're not alone in just like the university, um, like our team working to address it, but that even the UNM community around the university is also a part of wanting to address these issues as well. And so I think feeling that sense of community is key. And I know the students feel that as well. I know I put a lot of like quantitative data on there, but some of the things that I told Abby that really stood out to me are, there was a student that came back around and said, I was here at the fall event, and I've had groceries for the past several months because I was here in the fall. this has made a huge difference for me because now I have food. And so, yeah, we can look at, the numbers, but then when you hear those stories from the students that have attended these events, that's where it really, I think, hits me and it helps me know that we're making that impact for those students.
Yeah, I heard some, they were secondhand stories from people about, oh, this, having saved my life. I heard somebody else say who signed up for SNAP and then said, I can finally get groceries. And I had a conversation with another person that was talking about a student who spent a good part of the semester experiencing homelessness and sleeping near the buildings around campus and finding safe places within bushes to sleep and stuff. And you think, wow, like, well, first off, to the student that would continue to go to school, I just can't even fathom that sort of resiliency to get up the next morning and go to class. But I'm thankful that there is this social work internship program that you started, and I'm thankful that you're there too, that students have people that they can go to, that they can help um, really look at what's going on so that they can actually meet their ending goal of graduating. I'm wondering if you could talk about, I know Sarita's report had some, I believe some data on this. I don't know if you know it offhand, but what's the return on investment when we do see students graduating?
Oh, I won't remember all that. Well, Sarita will be the best one to answer like the exact numbers. But I do know there's definitely a correlation between once students have some of these issues met, and this is also the nationwide data too, they are more likely to graduate and more likely to be successful in all areas of their life because they're having these different areas that were making it harder to be successful addressed, and they don't have to worry about those as much. And that's, when we talk about those 8 dimensions of wellness and addressing all those areas, once you can help fix or try and support one area, then all the other areas start um to not be as difficult and not be as heavy and hard.
I want to just open it up real quick to the group, and if you guys have any other questions or things on your mind.
Abby. My question was about our location. In what ways does Central United Methodist Church's location assist us with this partnership? Uh, what benefit does Q imagine for our location? We have a very providential spot in Albuquerque, and thanks be to God, in 1951 we were planted there, and we've done a lot of amazing things from this location and want to continue. Um, the membership has invested tremendously in the facility. We've done I believe they've done, long before I got there, done a very faithful work in imagining how this facility can stand as a place of refuge and sanctuary and a place of action. So, pardon the preaching, Sunday's coming.
Sunday's coming. I love it. I'll speak into a little bit about it. I mean, on a very practical end, and then kind of on a larger level on a practical end. I mean, obviously, it's so natural and easy for us to go across the street. I mean, UNM is quite literally our neighbors. And we're right here. We're right there, right by them, So I think especially for this event, part of the ideation that Catherine Futuros had with me was to go down Central and to find restaurants that would join us and give out coupons and gift certificates and stuff like that. Well, they're our neighbors too. And so how can we get our neighbors to collaboratively work together for a common need? Because I think at the end of the day, the two things I would say I'm the most passionate about when it comes down to anything, one, this idea of wholeness and the dignity of people and addressing basic needs to help people to get back to that dignity. The second thing I'm really passionate about is there's no world where I think Central is going to solve basic needs and security. But I do think a collaboration of people is going to do it. And I think it's really interesting that where we're at, our actual physical location could perhaps maybe be a hub to facilitate this greater idea of collaboration. So in October, the Basic Needs Consortium will be hosting a conference where folks from who are in the consortium can come to Albuquerque. We do it all virtually, so for me to even meet Q in person was a lot of fun. And there's so many conversations that we're having monthly together to meet these people in person. Just helps to empower, helps ideation, helps grow what's going on. Central's going to host this event. And that's so exciting that, UNM, when we were talking with Sarita, it's quite expensive to host an event there. But we could be a neighbor and we can say we want to be a part of hosting this, allowing this to become alive. I think there's definitely potential for we have a large kitchen that we're in the process of starting to renovate. And what if we were to host some cooking classes or a cook off or something like that? What about even hosting an educational meal where, giving the social work interns a place, a literal stage. If you've seen our Central to Life, we have an actual literal stage that we could have areas, a safe place for students to come gather. There's not stigma there, it's just a church, but they could just be in a place where they could learn, where they could even have fun. Even if there are hard subjects going on, to do a cook off would be a lot of fun. So those are some of the ways I see the church and the actual physical location being a huge benefit for the work that's moving forward on a real practical area. I don't have to commute to UNM. I can walk across the street to a larger of what might we be able to use to create safe space for students to come together around these issues.
And we did have a couple of questions in the chat. Firstly, what about food drives?
I'll let you take that one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that we could definitely do. I don't know if you all know much about our food pantry that we have as well. So we do have a food pantry, and that's a part of our well-being team. The person that ran the food pantry recently left to another job, so they're posting for that. But I think we could also probably do something in collaboration with them as well. To maybe we all do something where we're collecting food. We have our interns there helping people learn more about SNAP and benefits, and also the food pantry is there to collect any extra food that comes in to better support the students. Some students might not qualify, and I think this will get into Ruth's question. Especially as I was mentioning, when I was working with graduate students, I worked with a lot of international students. Fortunately, international students don't qualify for things like SNAP. And so helping them know about places like the food pantry. I talked a lot about with my team this week about the struggles of international students, and I just didn't see it as much until I was working with them. Sometimes they have a community back home, talk about, community support, where everybody in the community put in money into a pot or into an account to get this student to come to the school here, but then they came here and they have enough money for school, but what about everything else? What about, having access to food, or, even getting clothes for interviews and things like that. So the food pantry is in the sub. And so not far from our office as well. And sometimes our interns even go into the food pantry and hang out there and say, hey, anybody here interested in applying for SNAP? And they'll help, them set up an appointment, or they'll take them back to our office, which isn't far. And just if you want me to, I can answer a little bit more about Ruth's question. A part of what we do too is bring students in to determine their eligibility. So I wouldn't know exactly of that 58% how many would qualify, but a lot of those students might not realize that they do qualify. And the reason I say that is sometimes when we've had students, even I heard somebody at this last event like, oh, I didn't think that I would be eligible for this. I didn't even know that this was something that would even be an option for me. There's a lot of that stigma around, well, I shouldn't do it. Somebody else probably needs it more than I do. But one thing that I know Dr. Cargas always says is I think it's like $3 billion or something like that is left on the table for students that every year, you know, when they go to apply and they, or that don't apply, all this money is being left on the table. It's not like it's, if I use some, then somebody else won't get some. That's what it's there for. I think the hard part with student eligibility too is there are work requirements that are put in place for college students, which makes it hard for some students that are in programs like, I know architecture and planning, some of their programs don't allow students to work while they're in school, which then would make them, would make becoming eligible for SNAP hard. Other programs like med schools and law schools don't allow students to work. And so that it depends on what program they're in. And so that's why when we meet with them, we try and determine their eligibility based on what they're telling us, what program they're in, what their income is, their status, all of that. We take all of that into account.
Is there one more question? We have time for one more. Well, I just want to express again, Q, that I'm deeply inspired by your work, and I am excited to continue to partner with you and continue to just make your guys' work shine, because it matters, and I think it does restore the dignity back to students. And what you did to create this social work internship program, that the UNM is so lucky to have you, and to the students, of course, to have safe people to be able to go to as they're facing these different things. And it's very, very obvious to me that the work you guys do is a labor of love. This will not be the last time that you will see Q. I'm certain that you'll see her again, and I'm really glad that you guys are here to actually meet who we're talking about and meet one of the people that we're collaborating with. The next steps is what I wanted to talk about real quick. We have another SNAP event coming up on CNM's campus on April 16th. And we'll be having more information about that as it's kind of just starting to get some information of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. It's going to be really different. UNM has the sub and a place where students naturally congregate. The thing I hear about CNM is it's more like car to class to car. So it will be a very different feel of how we interact with students, how we're able to allow them to learn about this resource. We're going to use pizza. I thought we need something that smells to draw students in. And so I think pizza is where we're going to go this next time with CNM. But nonetheless, it should be a lot of fun. I know Anne was there. We had a few different people. And if you're interested in volunteering and being a part of this event, please let me know, and I'll keep you in the loop as the pieces start coming together. As far as this group goes, one is a monthly event, and one will be happening on April 24th at 7 p.m. with Monet Silva. Monet Silva is the executive director of the New Mexico Coalition to End Homelessness. It's definitely one that I would recommend coming to. Monet has the pulse on the state of New Mexico when it comes to issues around homelessness. So I just want to thank you all again for joining us. Q, thank you so much for taking some time out of your night to be with us. And I do hope each of you have a really great night. Thank you again for coming.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you. So nice to see all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.